Okay, guys, so hello and welcome back to another exciting episode of Ninja News. I'm Ninja Andrew, and with me as always is...
Ninja Misty.
And today we are going to be tackling the ever-present topic of, do you even endgame, bro? And I'm not asking this to our audience. I'm not asking whether you play the endgames of your MMO or get to the ends of your video games. I'm asking the developers of video games, do you even have a plan for us to do something in your game, like, after we've beaten the storyline and sort of done everything? Or is it just kind of like, that's it and that's the end? Because Misty and I have noticed with a lot of games that we've been playing recently, while it seems like there's been quite a bit of effort to put content in there for you to play while you're doing the actual game stuff itself, it doesn't seem like there's been a lot of thought put into, like, how can we make this game into something where people will just always want to be here and have stuff to do that they can always look forward to doing and coming into the game and doing, instead of it just being sort of like you get to the game and that's it, or the end of the game and that's it. So I guess we'll start it off by maybe talking about some of the more recent games that we've played that have not really had a plan for an endgame, and then we'll go into maybe some of our more favorite platforms for doing it in the past and the future that we're looking forward to. So, do you want to start us off, Misty, with maybe some of the games we've played recently that don't really seem to have too much of a endgame plan?
Sure. And since we're in the world of Saints Row, I guess we can take this opportunity to talk about Saints Row.
Good place to start.
It's a good place to start. And Saints Row 4, we're actually in Gat Out of Hell at the moment, but in Saints Row 4, we played it through on the PS3, and when they reissued it, we got it for the PS4 because they came out with the Gat Out of Hell. I would really call it like a kind of standalone DLC,
yes,
is what it feels like.
Very much.
Instead of a new game,
yes.
And the thing with Saints Row, and I want to preface everything by saying that I enjoy Saints Row.
Yes.
I think that it's a entertaining co-op game, and I've had a really good time playing all of the ones that we've played.
Yep.
With that being said, there's a lot to do when you're going through, I guess you'd call it the main quest. There's the way Saints Row is built, there's a lot of like little mini games and side quests that kind of go to make up the entirety of the world. And what you find is when you make it through that main storyline, not a whole lot to do.
Well, it's like you complete the main storyline, you get to the end of the game, and you could go back and do all of those, like, activities or, like, go for your trophies or your feats and stuff, but it's like, yeah, there's no persistent sort of activity or excuse or reason to be in the game very much after that point. And it's even true with Gat Out of Hell. Now that we've been playing through a little bit, we're starting to get towards that end point where it's like, well, we're going to finish it, and then what? So,
Sure. And in that same vein, we also played through Dying Light.
Yes.
And in Dying Light, I enjoyed the game. I enjoyed the mechanics of the game. Looked great. Felt good to play it. But it was over really quickly, and then there was nothing to do.
Right.
And this was after doing all of the challenges, doing the little side kind of escort missions that are there. And I think that the mistake that was made on the part of Techland was waiting until months after the game is released to put in Horde mode.
Right.
Because a zombie Horde mode would definitely have me popping the game back in and going back into the world. The first DLC gave you 2 little quarantine missions. Let's all be honest, that probably takes 10, 15 minutes, 20 minutes tops of your time, and then it's done.
And you're done with the content.
You're done, and they did, I'll give Techland props for listening to their fans and trying to kind of, give more content, but
keep things fresh.
keep things fresh, they went back in and they put like the new hard mode where you can go change your settings. The nighttime creatures and everything are more difficult. I will say after the last update, you definitely could tell changes have been made to the world. There's more zombies there. It's a little more intense. But it almost feels like, well, why wasn't it like that at launch?
Right.
You know, and I know why, and that's, fodder for another episode. But it just... I think they're missing their golden opportunity because you have other games that are coming out, other zombie games that are coming out between now and May, hopefully. And what's my motivation? What is going to get me to put Dying Light back in, to go in and play Horde mode when it comes out? Now, for me, it's a little bit different because I bought the season pass, so I'll go in just to feel like I'm getting my money's worth. But if you didn't buy the season pass...
Like me.
They're... like Ninja Andrew... they're really going to have to kind of make this super epic Horde mode to kind of dust off the game and put it back in because you do finish it so quick. And like I said, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed playing it. But when I was done, when I had hit my max level, and I just lost all motivation for going back in there to play. Yeah. I know you can run and you can help other people and you can be the zombie and there's some things to do, but it's just not a compelling, engaging world. And I know Ninja Andrew will probably speak to a few things there with like the supply drops and that kind of thing.
Yeah, well, it's just like one of the major problems that I had just with the design or the thought process with it was just that it's like you're going to have these random elements like the supply drops, which happen very early on in the game. It's probably one of the first things you do is go and open up a supply drop, and it's sort of like an excuse, like a random instanced event or like a random, I don't know, what do you want to call it, open world event, where it drops in a supply drop, whether it's at daytime or nighttime, and that's an incentive to go out and do something. So it's like you get halfway through the game and they actually take the supply drops out of the game, and they don't do supply drops anymore. And it's kind of like, well, wouldn't it make more sense that, like, when you get your good weapons and you get all of your cool gear and abilities, that, like, that would be the time where you'd want to maybe, like, be a little bit more brave and venture out and go and, like, look for some of those supply drops, as well as, like, if you finish the game, that's, like, an incentive to go out there. And, like, it's not, like, the best. There's definitely other things they could do to add on to that kind of element. But it's like you had an element that could have been used to create an incentive for people to keep coming back and playing and looking around for, the other example I can think of is Rice's men all over the city. It's sort of like, yes, they're there, yes, they're on rooftops and in courtyard and stuff like that, but there's no sort of, like, I don't know, like building stronghold that they respawn at that you can just keep going back to and replaying and killing them, kind of like you would with maybe some MMOs or stuff out there where it's just like, okay, this place is going to respawn and maybe this time we'll take it at night and we'll go in with, all fire weapons or something. And at least it's something.
Let me interject here because it just happened to pop into my mind. Another thing which would be nice to see in Dying Light is that you could go back at a higher level and replay missions.
Sure. Another great example of, like, what were you, like, why would you make it so that you get to the end of the game and there's not, like, you can't even go back and replay the missions that you've already done? What?
Right. Kind of like you'd see in DC Universe if you want to go back in, the... you name it, anywhere, and redo your mission over and over and over again until you want to stab your eyeballs out. Hey,
well,
it's there for you.
It's like I'm willing to put up with that to a certain degree as long as the developers aren't putting some sort of, like, incentive-based thing to, like, now that you've beaten the game, you have to go back and replay the same thing over and over and over again in order to, like, stay on top of gear or stats.
Well, we'll get into that.
Right.
Yeah, don't go too far into that yet.
But one thing I just wanted to mention just back about Saints Row before we go too much further, it's just that it's like, I take a look at this world and I see all of the things that are put into it, and it's like, and I see all of the opportunities for something that would be interesting for me to continue wanting to do, and it's just not there. Like, it's like you come here and you have casinos that you can go to, well, at least they're called casinos from the outside. You can't actually go inside, and you know what I mean? Like, it's not like you could go in and play slots or craps or something and, you know, bet your soul currency away or something, you know what I mean? Or, like, I can't save and store vehicles in Get Out of Hell like I can in the main game, nor do I have apartments, and nor can I decorate them. Like, there's just no excuse to be within the game beyond what it's presenting to you. And I think that that's a real missed opportunity when it's like, if it felt like this was a place that Misty and I could just come back and hang out whenever we wanted, that would be way more fun, you know?
Well, and here's another thing specifically about Saints Row. What you'll find in Get Out of Hell, you have the little kind of mini-game instances that are around. And there was one, it was like a survival instance, and I thought, oh, good, you know, here we go. It's like, I thought it was going to be like a horde mode, or we have to survive wave after wave of demons, and it was like, no.
It's just like maybe 3 waves of 15 regular dudes with guns, and then it's over. Which takes you maybe 2 superpower charges moves to deal with all of them, you know?
And the thing is, you have all of the character models, you have the ability to put that somewhere in the game. Even if we went into one of the arenas, and inside of this arena is a self-contained survival mode, kind of like what they're going to do for Dying Light.
Right.
It's like, why not put that in there? That can't be that much.
You know, to make a consistent arena where either you play against NPCs and, like, you know, all-stars and Gray's characters from the game, or, like, even, like, in certain cases for other games, I think, you know, battle arenas where you can bring your ultimately leveled up character and, you know, duel against somebody else who has not, but we'll get into that as well. So, I don't know, what game do we want to talk about next?
Well, what direction do you want to go in, up or down?
Oh, God. Well, I think that, like, the next 2 games I'm going to mention here kind of go into a slightly different topic that we could do a whole other video for, and we probably will at some other point, but I'm going to bring up Destiny and DCUO and their sort of methodology behind content and endgame content. And it's actually that, like, I'm going to put up here my protest against, once again, I think you guys all know how I feel about it, but just the grind and the sort of forced grind that goes along with MMOs, where it's like, oh, you leveled your character up to level 30 or level 40 or whatever level it is that they want you to level up to, and then it's like, okay, now you can either go back to another starting level zone of another, you know, character, like if you know, I'm thinking maybe Final Fantasy Realm Reborn there even, but or that essentially you're going to end up replaying now the same, you know, very small number of instances over and over and over again. And, like, even in DCUO's case, it's like, even when you get beyond, you know, Tier 1 content, they still want you to go back and play those things to make marks, so that you can afford to play the next tier up of content. And, you know, dividing up the game like that and sort of forcing you to play it in that way, I'm really not a fan of. And I feel like it does us a disservice as gamers, especially in the case of, like, Destiny, where it's like, man, there's so little endgame content to the game that it's like, you had to frickin' prevent people from being able to queue into it. Otherwise, everybody would have finished it in week 1, and we would have all been going, where's the rest of the game? It's like, when you get to the end of this game that you're supposed to feel all epic about having leveled up to, and then there's like 5 instances for you to go and replay from here until the ends of the earth, it's like, it feels, I don't know, like there's not enough. That's just my own personal opinion, but it's like,
it is.
You know, what are your thoughts on those games and their...
Well, Destiny's a whole other thing, and I think we've covered that in other episodes, or will cover it.
Yes.
DCUO,
they're better. They're better because they bring out way more content than Destiny. I will give them that. Like, they have done a really good job over the years of keeping
right.
DLC.
And you have to admit, Andrew, we played DCUO for a very, 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 very long time.
I hear it.
And so, if you look back and you say, well, did I get my money's worth out of DCUO? I feel like I did.
I feel like I did as well.
I got that, and more. It has been, continues to be, because I haven't stopped playing it. I just don't play it with the frequency that I did because I do, other things as well. And what I would like to see from DCUO, or some of the things that I would like to see from DCUO in regards to what we're talking about here, is when they come out with new DLCs. I would like to see that scaled along the tiers. Sure, bring out the next level of super uber hard content for your CR 113s, but also release content for those people who may be CR 40 or CR 70, and give them something new to do besides run Vengeance or Dawn or
for the
Prime,
umpteenth bajillion time.
Gate.
Yes.
Right. And the thing is we sit here, it is pretty easy to get yourself up to like a CR 102, 103. It really is by the time you mod, and, you have to put a little bit of effort in. But it would just be nice to see some fresh content that's at the lower levels, or follow along with the same train of thought that you had when you came out with the novice raid.
Sure.
It's like, sure, give us the Gates of Hades raid, but maybe give us a Gates of Hades raid at a CR 70 as well, for those people who may not be playing the game with the level of frequency that it's going to take to get through. And it's like, I know you guys have gone in the other direction. It's like, okay, well, here's this raid, and then here's this advanced, it's the exact same raid, but it's the advanced raid. So you have like hard, and you have super duper uber hard. Right. It's like, well, also when you're doing that, take it down a notch and give us a raid that's challenging, but that's not impossible, where you're spending, umpteen hours trying to get through this content. Because I think that game companies are going to have to start looking at the amount of time that people have to invest. And it's one of the things, that kind of ties in with Destiny. Hours and hours and hours and hours to get through one instance isn't feasible in a lot of people's lives anymore, because we are busy. We are on the go. There's a lot going on. And it would just be nice to, and if you do have that time, maybe, you've got a day off or it's the weekend and you do want to like really go in there, with your buddies and have this kick-ass experience. But also have something there if you maybe have 30 minutes or 45 minutes and you want to get a little bit of gaming in and have that, right. Maybe not the super epic gear, but decent gear to keep you, engaged in the new content that's coming out. I think they do a good job of giving a variety. You get duos, you get solo, you get 4-player, you get 8-player. I think they've done good with that. I'd like to see more open world stuff, like the way, and they did that a little bit with, I think it was the Inner Gang Penthouse, or not the Penthouse, but the Inner Gang, when we were outside in Metropolis. But back in the day when you had Vengeance and Dawn outside, that felt really good. And I understand that there was a lot of server instability because of the amount of people. But it would be nice to see those kind of open world events, because I like being in DCUO, just hanging out in there sometimes, flying around, not doing a whole lot, that has its appeal like it does in any game. And I think they've done a good job with listening to people with league halls and bases and, giving you something to do beyond just queuing into yet another instance.
Right.
It would just be nice to see maybe some new outdoor content. And I know they've done that a little bit with what you get in the alternate Metropolis and Gotham Under Siege, where you go out and do those kind of open world instances. But I think if you put more stuff out into just Gotham and Metropolis for people to do, I think you get more people engaged in the game.
Yeah.
I think you get people stay around longer.
'Cause
Even if you had, like with what Ninja Andrew was saying here with, like, the casino, wouldn't it be cool if there was, like, you could go into, like, a Joker's Funhouse type of thing, and there were, like, mini games that you could do with your friends that were based off of things happening in DC.
Prizes.
You know,
Prizes. I just want to win prizes, guys. Come on.
well, and let me just put this out there. I want to win prizes, but I do not want those damn Egyptian leggings.
Right.
Or
Right, exactly. That's it.
the other crap that's been dropping in the vault since I started playing DCUO in 2011.
Yeah.
So just putting that out there. If you're going to give us something new.
Yeah. But just like the thing that really gets to me when I'm thinking about this stuff is just once again having to queue into that same instance that I've already played 50, 100, 200, 500 times. It's like, that's not a way to play a game. You know what I mean? That's not a way to, like, it's like I'd much rather have reasons, like, put actual content out in the world for me to go and explore, not just play the same instance over and over and over again and pretend that it's somehow new every time, you know?
I will say that, but I'll also say, you know, in defense of DC, there are a lot of instances you can queue into.
It's true.
And even the stuff, and it may be stuff like, you know, I don't really want to do a solo, or I don't really want to do this. It's like there is a lot of stuff out there.
There is a lot of stuff, but like my problem with DCO especially is that it's like when they come out with a new tier of DLC, let's say for instance, it's like you won't necessarily be strong enough to get in to do the raids, so then you're like, oh, well, I guess I'll go in and do whatever this solo or alert is or whatever, and then it turns into you just end up grinding whatever that new instance is over and over and over and over, and so it's like anytime they add some new content, it's like they've just added one more step of this stuff that you're going to have to do over and over and over and over again, and that just really kills the fun of the game for me. You know, kills my motivation to continue playing when it's like, I'm not actually doing anything new. You guys have just put in this artificial thing where it's like, I need to either make X number of marks or I need to have certain stats on my gear or whatever. And so until that happens, I'm going to have to play this instance over and over and over again. And it's like, that's what I am really starting to not like in MMOs. So it's just, I know that's my own personal opinion, but I hope that developers take things like that into consideration and maybe try to make games that like don't have such a focus on replaying of content and have more of a focus on just making an enjoyable playground to play in, you know, with stuff to do, you know?
We'll see, in which I've found that a little more in Final Fantasy A Realm Reborn.
Right. You know?
Because there's a lot to do. Now, that's not saying that there aren't things that are repetitive. You know, if you don't like fetch quests, stay away from Final Fantasy A Realm Reborn, because there are going to be a lot of fetch quests. But there's a lot to do there. I mean, even just hanging out, because it looks incredible. I mean, it just, like, I want to move there. So if you figure that one out, if anybody knows how to do that, just let me know. Because I'll pack my bags and be on my way. But they came out with a Golden Saucer Casino. They're always coming out with new content. And, you know, it's subscription-based, so it comes at a price.
Yes.
And that's, you know, we've covered that in other episodes.
I think we'll still do an MMO-based...
Sure,
episode.
but I'm just saying that we've talked about transactions and subscriptions and, you know, those type of things. But what I've found so far, I've enjoyed, and I haven't really, other than where you can start to get bored with, like, oh, I have to go, you know, take a message here or deliver this. Sure, you know, that gets kind of boring. But as far as the raids and alerts and things like that I've done, I haven't really had to grind anything yet. I'm sure that will come once I hit level 50, because I'm not quite there yet. Right. But overall, you know, Final Fantasy is a different creature as far as combat goes, but it's been a decent experience for me.
Okay. That's fair enough, you know. I'll cover my own personal side of that at some point, I'm sure. You know? So, some other games that we had talked about, do you want to take us into maybe some Walking Dead and Red Dead?
Sure. The thing for me is when I look at a game that is telling me a story and there's a clear end in sight, I guess the kind of gold standard for me is the Walking Dead game by Telltale Games. It was very concise. It compelled you to play the game, and you felt at the end that you were done. Unless you wanted to go back, make different choices, and have a totally different experience. So you could be satisfied with your choices, or
just from a single playthrough, but there's still that option to go back and just see what else happened. Yeah.
And it was solid on the single playthrough. You could be perfectly satisfied to play that game, feel good about the money that you spent, and feel like you really had a rewarding gaming experience.
Although I will say that the one thing that it will do is make you go, what's going to happen next? Because you're just going to be like, oh man, like hanging off the edge of your seat. So when you get to the end of season 1, you are going to want to like be like, okay, I need to go play season 2 now. So
yes,
that is like, and I think that's a positive towards that game, you know. But
definitely, I think they did that very well. I think that type of gaming, that story driven, gamer choice driven, I guess is how you would really describe it. They do that very successfully.
Yeah.
Another game that I guess I hold near and dear to my heart was Red Dead Redemption. I played the hell out of Red Dead Redemption. They gave you a nice, solid story campaign with John Marston. While you're going through that, you also had the option to, I guess, ride the range out into the world of multiplayer, which I did, and prestiged all the way up to my little zebra donkey. Mm-hmm. What I found, and of course, sure, there's some grinding there. There were plenty of assaults on some of the encampments that, you know, over and over and over again. The good thing about it is that every time you went in, there are different people playing, so you might have like a band of bandits that were hunting you while you were trying to get that done.
Right.
So it was a solid game from that standpoint, in my opinion. And then they brought out like the co-op, the 4-player. They had different multiplayer modes. And it was almost like, you know, you kind of got to the point where it's like, I've done everything. I've got my zebra donkey. I'm going to ride off into the sunset and, you know, maybe come back in every blue moon, and boom, they dropped Undead Nightmare. And that gave you a whole new single-player experience to play through. It gave you Horde mode with Undead Overrun. And I just think it was a really good example of how a game can give you a full experience kind of right out of the box and then successfully add on to it without causing you to, like, go take a second job or mortgage your house.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Now, I am going to be a little contentious here just because my own experience with Red Dead.
Because you weren't playing with me.
It's true. I wasn't playing with you at the time, so that probably did affect my experience overall. I will give you that. But just essentially, like, my problem with Red Dead was that you get to the end of the storyline, and then the multiplayer was essentially like a carbon copy of some of the things you were actually doing in the storyline. So to me, that multiplayer experience looked and felt very much like the same kind of grinding experience that I kind of try to avoid, and that's actually what turned me off the game, and I avoided the game after that because I didn't personally like that. Although I will say that Misty and I went back together and played the Undead Nightmare, and I loved that. So it's like I think there's a certain balance to be struck between, like, definitely putting out a good standalone DLC, Gat Out of Hell or the Undead Nightmare, I think would be two successful representations of that in our eyes. But I
think Undead Nightmare was more successful.
Sure. But
there was more.
But I just think that it's like, if it's going to be done in a way of DLC, we prefer like the standalone DLC model to like what Dying Light did, for instance, where it was very chopped up into small pieces, and you don't really feel like you're getting everything. And so it's like, if it comes down to it, I prefer, and I think that's what we're both saying. So it's just like, but I think that the balance needs to be struck also with like, if you're gonna try to extend the multiplayer or the experience beyond the game, like sort of any steps that can be taken. Like I'll use Gat Out of Hell as an example. In order to extend the gaming experience, as I mentioned before, casinos is one, an arena is one that Misty mentioned. I think that opening up, as we said, vehicles and apartments is another way to extend experience. And, also shopping at stores for clothing, and, bringing in more actual brand name clothing from the outside can actually help you to be like, oh, maybe I will spend some more money on this game, or maybe I will, continue to go and, party around in it for a little while. I think other things that help are things like co-op definitely helps, being able to, especially if you're going to have a standalone single-player experience. It's like, once you get out of that, you kind of want to hang out with your friends in the same world. You know what I mean? And it's like, so I'm not against, like, if you added into all of that, being able to replay the missions that you did as you were playing the game, because I think that's making the best use of what you have, right? But I don't think that the best model is to only do that, is to only allow you to replay the same stuff. I think it's better to have a bit more of an expansion. Same as in like Destiny, like if they had a casino or gambling of items or sparrow racing or any of those things, you'd have felt like, okay, maybe there's a bit more of a reason to be in this game than just regrinding the same 10 instances or whatever it was, So, just sort of continuing on, and I think these are games that everybody's going to be able to relate to, but just on the level of like a single-player game that does a good job of being a single-player game and you feel satisfied when you get to the end of it, I would say are Final Fantasy, Kingdom Hearts, some of the games in those series. I know I have some others, but I'll wait to mention them. But just like, when I think of Final Fantasy games, or Kingdom Hearts, it's like a 200+ hour potentially game if you decide to go in and do absolutely everything. And the storyline is there, the characters are there, the experience is large enough. There's mini games. It's a rich enough experience that when you get to the end of that 200 hours, you actually probably feel like this is a good time to stop. This is a good, nice. I've spent enough time playing, and this is a good place for it to end, and for me to not feel like I have to be here forever and ever and ever, because it also, I will say, is not prohibitive enough for you to be like, I don't want to pick up the game again, because I can say for a fact that it's like, I've picked up and played Kingdom Hearts many times all the way through, Final Fantasy X many times, most of the way through. I watched the end get beaten, but I have problems. I have issues, guys. Don't judge. But same with like Final Fantasy XII. It's like there's enough meat on the bones of those games that they can afford to stand alone, where I think that some of these other games, it's like, not that it's like, oh, you aren't giving me enough content, or you aren't, but just that there's going to come a point, maybe a week after I buy the game, maybe 2 weeks or a month or whatever, where I'm going to put your game down. And will there be an incentive for me to pick it back up again, ever? You know what I mean? Or can you convince me to not put the game down until maybe you put out something that's even more enticing? You know what I mean? Is there anything that you want to add along those lines, or anything that's made you think of?
I think, when we cover MMOs that we'll be able to go more in depth, because what came to mind was PvP, having those instances, as something to do as an alternative to the grind.
Right.
And like I said, we can go in depth and those kind of things. But I think overall, we've covered a great deal here.
I just kind of wanted to touch on a few more things, and before we finish off, I know this has been a long episode, so...
Yeah, really long.
Sorry, guys. Maybe we'll cut it down into smaller pieces, I don't know. But just essentially that, like, I personally think that the best video game model out there to look to is things like Skyrim and Fallout. Places where they've tried their best to create a world that is interesting to be in and that you feel like you want to be in. So it's like the more that games can sort of try to strive towards, I think, that as a goal, especially like co-op. Like if Misty and I could come into the game every day and it was like, we didn't even have to think about it. It was just like, oh yeah, we're going to go and sign into this game because it's where we live. It's where we, exist. It's where we do all of our stuff. It's, where we spend most of our time and have the most fun. Sort of like your home-based game. That's going to obviously be the most successful game because it's going to be the one that you're going to feel like going back to after you've gone and had another experience. Because you'll be like, okay, well, that experience was fun, but I'm going to go back to wherever I feel. So it's like if you can create a consistent experience of providing that, then people, I think, will just automatically follow out of the desire to just live in a really cool place and have fun and do things with each other and all that kind of stuff. So it's
going to take a lot for me.
It will. I know. Misty's very picky, and
oh yeah, because you're not.
She hasn't played a lot of Skyrim or Fallout.
It didn't grab my attention quite as much as it grabbed yours.
Put your comments in the below and tell Misty why she needs to play Skyrim and Fallout, guys. Just please. I've tried many times.
Mm-hmm. I've played them.
Yes, I know. But the other games that I'm thinking of now are Plants vs. Zombies and the upcoming Dead Island 2. So do you want to take us maybe through like why we like Plants vs. Zombies so much and their formulas? Just
sure.
Really quickly.
I mean, the thing for Plants vs. Zombies, it's really, I look at it as a no-commitment game. It's fun to go in. It's that if you don't know anything about it, you can tune into our video on it and get a good eyeball full. It's quick to drop in, drop out, have a really kind of zany third-person shooter experience with a high level of customization as far as your characters, the appearance of your character. There are multiple game modes that you can choose to play, and I think that they've done a really good job at creating, and it's family friendly. If you have kids or younger brothers or sisters, or you're wanting to play, or even if you can convince your mom or dad to pick up their controller, it might be a good experience that that you can have just kind of hanging out, and it's not a threatening game. It's not a huge time suck.
Right.
And they are going to come out with new content. They try to run little kind of real-time events, at least once a month.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just think they did a really good job.
I really like how they use the content to reward the player for playing, rather than making it into some sort of like, your ability to play hinges on whether you've leveled up your character to X, or whatever. It's not like that. It's more like, oh, you played another few games, well, unlock another sticker pack and collect them all and get a bunch more cool stuff. And it's like you always feel like wow, there's more cool stuff for me to get. And it's like, I think I'm like level 44, and I know Misty's like already in the hundreds, you know what I mean? And it's like it goes up many multiple hundreds, but you don't feel like that's some sort of like oppressive thing that's weighing over your head, that you know what I mean, like, oh, that guy's level 300, he's gonna kick my butt. It's just more that like, okay, that guy probably,
well, he probably will, but
he might he's probably very experienced, but at least it's like he probably just has a lot of customization gear, but and all the characters, but it's not like he has like a very large advantage having, you know what I mean? No. It's just a reward for...
It's not like he has a level 300 weapon and you have a level 40 weapon.
Exactly. So it's like, that's why it feels very non-threatening to go in, because the game has been very well balanced between all of these different characters and all of these different things, that it's like, it's more just about the fun of playing it. It's the fun of unlocking the stuff, rather than it having to be like, oh, you need to spend X number of hours playing every day, or else you're going to fall behind, or, you know what I mean, all these other things.
Sure.
So it's like, that's why, you know, for Misty and I, it's become like a very easy game for us to just drop in and out of every once in a while whenever we get the urge, you know? And I think that makes it incredibly successful all around, because if we like it, and all the other people that are playing like it, then that's just good all around, you know? Do more stuff like that, game companies. Make me unlock sticker packs full of lots of awesome stuff.
Okay, and you were going to talk about Dead Island 2?
Okay, well, I think it's the last game we'll touch on here, guys. Dead Island 2 is probably the game, like... I won't confuse anybody. Dead Island 2 is the game that I'm probably the formula that I'm looking the most forward to, because from everything that they've set it up to be a never-ending zombie playground with mission and content and stuff for you to always go and do. Now, I will assume that at some point you're going to have done everything, like at least once you'll have been there and played it somehow, but I'll imagine that the way that they're going to run the loot and the way that they're going to run just like day-night cycles or whatever, you know, like there's going to be little things that'll change what your experience is, as well as its 8-person multiplayer. So I think that'll lead to some very fun party-type experiences of, you know, killing the zombies and doing the missions and getting into trouble and all that kind of stuff. So it's like, I think it's going to also have that element of not feeling like you have to make a commitment to it. Like you can drop in and out whenever you want and still have fun, and I think that's going to be really beneficial and play into its favor. So, you know, I think that's definitely a game to keep an eye on and just try out the formula. See if it's fun, see if you like it, see if it's like, that's what I'm doing. I'm not necessarily saying that that's something that everybody's going to want to do. You might not like zombie games. I'm just saying that it's like, that's why I'm looking forward to it.
Cautiously optimistic.
As always. So, sorry this episode went on so long, guys. Thank you for joining us. We hope that you guys liked the discussion, and maybe you guys have something you want to add, or maybe you learned something new or something or other.
All right, guys. So, like, subscribe.
Save me, Misty.
Comments, questions, any topics that you guys would like for us to discuss, just drop them down there in the box below, and join us next time for more news and opinions on Dork Ninja Gaming.
That's right.
Bye.